in any sense, where, as mentioned in the last couple sermons, where, and one thing I'll end with is that this is so important for this book, because what is so natural, especially in American religion, is kind of the Bible's kind of a sort of a, just kind of a general, kind of fluffy sort of religious document, and not getting the plot, and not understanding where Horton just so makes such an important point, and that is, you have to start in creation. You don't start with the gospel like I was in the church that I was raised in when I was 18, where you kind of just start in the Gospels, and it's didn't understand the difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and it's all kind of just this spiritual principles, whether you're in the New Testament or the Old Testament. And understanding the significance of Genesis 1 through 3 is so important. That is, understanding the significance of God making creation, the significance of the fall of the federal head of all humanity, our first parents, his failure and what that means for us and who we are and how we're born. The significance of understanding creation. You cannot understand. The New Testament is understood like in the context of the Old Testament. And until you understand God's holiness and his justice and how depraved we actually are before God, you can't get grace. Grace is just a nice, fluffy sort of thing, and God's just a nice guy who likes to give group hugs and good stuff. But that is not God of Scripture. And so it's not until we really, with Peter and Jacob and all these other sinners, that finally come to a place where they realize how depraved they are, where you can really understand the depths of God's grace. So obviously that's the main thing that I want to communicate, and as we go through this, we're going to specifically go into the depths of the significance of what are called the doctrines of grace, that are, the Reformers were just a whole bunch of pastors who were contravening, speaking against, polemicizing against the Pharisaical, legalist, evil teachings of that we are justified by grace totally, but by our works, and not understanding grace. So in that big picture view, I think Anna Horton just does he's so gifted and just such a great job of explaining the biblical doctrines of grace in such a way that is so comforting and so freeing, so helpful in so many ways. As Paul says in Galatians 5, for freedom Christ has set us free. Stand firm, therefore, and do not submit again to a yoke of slavery. Speaking to a bunch of Christians in Galatia that were going back to
Does he make like comparison Arminian doctrines? Like,
yes. Yeah. And Roman Catholic as well, yeah. Okay.
Well, David, how about you just go this way around the circle and just...
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you want me to like... so you just basically want me to just like introduce...
However the Spirit moves you, David.
Just kind of your background, where you're from, and kind of your views, kind of like...
Alright, well, I mean, I didn't grow up in like a Christian home at all. Like, and my only experience of Christianity was my sisters who live in Ohio, and they're Pentecostals. So I didn't really understand it at all. Like, when I was 13, I was in Ohio visiting my sisters. I went up for the altar call to accept Christ or whatever, but I didn't understand. I only did it because I thought that's what my sisters wanted me to do. I had no understanding, but looking back on it and looking at certain things, like I could see that's kind of like, I mean, God still used that. But like I didn't officially like get saved, I guess, until I was like 19, when I was living in Kansas City. Like, but before that, I was actually really, really hardcore anti-Christian. Like I would like just like, because there's things I've been through. Like I actually hated God. So like I would, and I couldn't do anything to God, so I'll take it out on Christians. yeah, so like, just these certain things that happen. Sorry. Like,
Need some water?
I don't know,
Okay.
like, yeah, then when I was 19 and I started going to I started going to this it was called the Vineyard. It's pretty much just like the church he went to. It was very hyper spiritual and like, and I got wrapped up in it because like it wasn't like any other church I thought. It wasn't like the idea that I had of church. It was very, I guess like cool or whatever. Like they had like a live worship bands and all that sort of stuff. And I loved it. I went there. I was a part of like a bunch of small groups there. I was part of Bible study there. I was very active in it. And like so, and I grew a lot in there. And then, yeah, and then like I ended up. So I kind of just like certain things that we used to do. Like I remember we used to like. One of the groups I was in was called Tower. It was like a 20-something group or whatever. So like it was like a group of young adults. I remember after the group was over, like a couple of us still stayed back, and we called it treasure hunting. And what we would do is like our way of evangelism or whatever. And what we would do is we would meet in the back or whatever, and we'd pray and ask God to like put like something on our hearts where He wants us to go to, like. You want us to go to like Safeway or something, and like I think God wants us to go to Safeway right now, and there's gonna be a guy there wearing a red shirt, and we're supposed to witness to him. So we'd all get in the car and go to Safeway and look for a guy wearing a red shirt. we would just start witnessing to him. I don't know.
Wearing a red shirt.
Yeah, exactly. No, and then
I didn't realize all the employees were red.
I
Do it.
Yeah, no, like,
Safeway employees.
yeah.
Like, revival. They call it the Safeway revival.
Like so, like we kind of like, and like I still talk to a lot of my friends from the vision, and they still kind of like believe that way and everything. And yeah, and I never understood Romans chapter 9. I never even like I would read it and it just never made sense to me. Like actually none of Romans made sense to me. Like so then it was, and then just like last year I think it was right before I went to Job Corps. I ended up getting kicked out of Job Corps, which at the time I didn't really look like. At the time I thought that was the worst thing that ever happened to me. But looking back on it, it was actually a blessing in disguise because Job Corps wasn't for me.
Did they all have red shirts on?
So yeah. No, but like after I got kicked out, I ended up talking to a friend, and she actually introduced me to reform theology and everything. And at first, like I didn't want to I was able to accept total depravity because when I was going to the Vineyard, I'm rewinding a little bit. When I was going to the Vineyard, I came across Paul Washer. I started listening to his sermons, and I found one of his sermons called "Declaring War Against the Sinner's Prayer." I was like, "This is amazing! Like I never heard this before." I took it to the Vineyard, thinking that people were going to accept it because it's biblical and everything. I ended up getting into like a really, really heated debate with someone about it. To this day, he wanted to talk to me. But so I had a little bit of a seed planted there, but she actually fully introduced me to it. And yeah, I was able to accept, I was even able to accept unconditional election and everything. The two that I argued with her about was the free will concept and perseverance of the saints. I thought that was heretical. I was like, what? How can you? And I would always go back to Hebrews chapter 6. And I was like, that clearly said that it wasn't until I actually studied it more that I realized that I was wrong. And yeah, so here I am now.
Praise Jesus!
Yeah, you can see that every time I put it
I wish you were in red today. It feels like a color for you. You feel less spiritual.
Is someone going to come and witness to you today?
All right, Joe. We can't see you. That's all right. No worries. But if you'd like to hear background.
Well, yeah, I tried to turn the camera on actually, and it won't turn on for some reason. It doesn't want to cooperate with me. So, all right. So, considering I'm a joking person, they say since we're all in a group setting, I should probably tell you that I have a problem. I'm a recovering Catholic. But no, actually, I don't know. Wait, can you guys hear me or?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, just making sure. And I sort of, I got a bit of an iffy past, but I can get into it a little bit. I grew up in a Catholic church, which is kind of ironic because I grew up as Roman Catholic and my last name is Roman, so it's kind of ironic. But I'm not wearing any red shirts, so David, don't try to do anything. I'm just kidding. No, but I actually went to the Vineyard also. But I grew up kind of not doing the right things. I was you know, I grew up Roman Catholic and in church. I was in church every Sunday. Well, yeah, most of them anyway. But I wasn't really living the way that I was supposed to. I kind of had some in and outs. I joined as a member, as a kid, I was a member of a street gang, but doing the wrong things. And basically, what happened is I took a move out to Michigan. And I think Michigan's kind of where I started to awaken that there's a life outside of getting in trouble, getting arrested, doing things I'm not supposed to be doing. And I went into the military. And I remember I went to a church there. And, well, they kept having some missionaries come by my barracks room and trying to get me to go to church with them. And after about a month, I said yes, only because I wanted them to leave me alone. And I went to the church, and everybody was up at the altar, and I kind of was like the only one sitting, not up there, and I felt kind of foolish, so I went up there, and I think that's kind of where things took a change for me. There's just like I guess a weight lifted off my shoulder at that point. I mean, I don't want to get too metaphorical, because I do come from an evangelical church, so I don't want to get too much in a metaphor, but I guess I kind of realized at that moment I switched. I went from Roman Catholic to agnostic to atheist, and so I kind of had a moment there that maybe I was a little bit wrong. So, but it scared me a little bit. So I actually stayed away from the church for a few years after that. And actually, you're sitting in the room with someone who brought me back to church, David. So it was David the one that did it. He actually when I came out here, I became friends with him, and I went to the Vineyard. And me and him just kind of got into doing some Bible studies, and David's actually the one that kind of brought me back for the most part. I was already going back to church a little bit, but I wasn't fully into it or fully into researching it or what it meant. I was just kind of going through the motions. And, I don't know. I guess, if I could describe where I sit at now, well, not really. I'm not like completely 100% knowledgeable on it. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to study. I'm actually reading a book right now. It's called God and a Question, a Debate Between a Christian and Atheist by William Lane Craig. And so I don't know. I guess I'm very, very. I don't know how to describe it, but I'm going to be depending a lot on David to help me out with things. But so he's actually the one that's leading me in the way that I'm going. So. Yeah, as far as, like I used to go to he was absolutely right. I remember one time when we were at the Vineyard, this was after David had left and I was still in the Vineyard, they asked us to imagine a place where we could go to. And the descriptions of what we were supposed to do was so vague that you could almost imagine it being anywhere. My imagination of where I was going had mountains and sand. There's a lot of places in the world that have that, but apparently I was supposed to go to mountains and sand, and I was supposed to talk to people there, and I don't know, it just stopped feeling right. It didn't feel like at home anymore. Like after a while, like of going there, I didn't feel like it began like I was being a little stagnant, so I left the church again. Not really left, but I just stopped going. And depended more on Bible studies with David, and now David's bringing me back. So that's pretty much, that's pretty much what I can say.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem.
far back you want to go, so we only got one an hour.
Entirely up to you.
I was ready. Yeah, no, my father was a Catholic, my mom was Lutheran, but pops ruled the house. Wasn't until probably about half through my sentence when even though I was going to church all the time, and most of the volunteers that were going in to teach were, now that I could look back at it, were somewhat charismatic or a lot. Yeah, I just got into a faith pod over there where you actually get paid to study down there. I couldn't understand why, after waiting almost 2 years to getting into this program, that 4 days after I got into the program, they told me to pack it up, I'm leaving. I knew God was sovereign. I understood God sovereignty enough to say, well, it is. I can't change it, and I don't see what you have, but why, but I accepted it. I ended up at Territorial in Kansas City, where I hooked up with a bunch of brothers that and teachers over there that were teaching Reformed theology and Reformed ways, and that was the best 6 years of my life. I mean, the light bulbs just really started going off, you know. Now I totally understand this, and now I'm understanding this more and more. I always had this view before that God was waiting for me to do something, that He was going to move on what I did. And, you know, now I understand that He's not waiting for anything. It's just, you know, a lot of people will say, well, the God you serve is so sovereign that He knows everything from the beginning to the end, and you're just living the life of a robot. But love what you teaching us over the last few months about that in the second service. And so I'm a firm believer of the Torah. I read R.C. Sproul, Andrew Murray, Charles Spurgeon, Michael Horton now. I was reading a lot of Martin Lloyd-Jones, which I shared with you, and when people try to hand me a book like, say, Rick Warren's Purpose Driven, I have to restrain from vomiting. But with that, with understanding grace, I have to understand that there was a time in my life when I was probably as far along or no further along than this person is that's coming up with all the, excuse my language, Jesus crap. And I just have to give them grace and try to understand that it's the Holy Spirit that does the conviction. We can give everybody all the tools, we can plant all the seeds, but until the